The signal arrived at Galactic Council Station Nexus 7 at 0347 Standard Galactic Time, crackling through the deep space communication arrays with a desperation that only came from a dying world. Senior Communications Officer Zekthan of the Valerian Empire barely glanced up from his crystalline display screen, his four eyes scanning the transmission details with practiced indifference. "Another primitive distress call," he announced to the operations center, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles in his standard galactic. "Sector 7 Alpha 9. Some backwater system." Around him, the various alien species that comprised the station's crew continued their duties with the same disinterest. The Nexus 7 station orbited the neutral zone between three major galactic powers, serving as a monitoring post and communication relay for the civilized galaxy. Distress calls from primitive worlds were as common as stellar radiation and just as ignored. Zekthan pulled up the transmission data, his secondary arms working the holographic controls while his primary hands sorted through other communications. The signal originated from a small yellow star system containing several planets, one of which showed signs of primitive industrial civilization. The beings there called themselves humans, and their world Earth. "What's their tech level?" asked Mordek, a heavily armored Kryn who served as the station's security chief. His massive frame cast shadows across multiple workstations as he approached. "Pre-warp," Zekthan replied with a dismissive gesture. "Still using chemical rockets and primitive radio waves. They haven't even achieved fusion power yet. Class 7 civilization at best." A series of harmonious tones echoed from the corner where Lyra S., a Melodian communications specialist, worked at her console. Her species communicated primarily through musical frequencies, and her translator converted her song speech into words. The transmission appears to be automated, broadcasting continuously across multiple frequencies. They seem quite distressed. Zekthan finally activated the full translation protocol and leaned back in his chair as the human message began to play through the station speakers. The voice was male, speaking in what the computer identified as English, one of several hundred languages detected from the planet. "This is Commander Sarah Chun of the UEF Resilience, broadcasting on all frequencies. Our colony ship suffered catastrophic system failures during our attempted journey to Proxima Centauri. We are stranded in deep space, life support failing. 3,000 souls aboard, including 500 children. Our position is..." The coordinates followed, along with technical specifications of their primitive vessel and a desperate plea for assistance. The operations center fell silent for a moment before erupting in what could only be described as laughter. The Valorians' chittering clicks, the Kryns' rumbling growls of amusement, and the Melodians' discordant notes all blended into a symphony of mockery. They tried to reach another star with chemical rockets. Mordek's translator barely managed to convey his amusement through the mechanical rendering of his native grunts. "How charmingly optimistic. Look at these specifications." Zekthan pulled up the technical data streaming from the human vessel. "They're using nuclear fission for power." "Nuclear fission? My offspring's toys have better power sources." Lyra NIS sang something that translated to mild curiosity. The vessel design is actually quite ingenious given their limitations. Multi-generational journey planned, complete ecosystem management, resource recycling systems. "Primitive but creative." "Creative stupidity," corrected Zekthan. "They launched themselves into the void with technology barely adequate for planetary orbit. Now they're dying slowly in space, just as physics demands. Natural selection at work." The transmission continued looping, growing more desperate with each repetition. Commander Chin's voice cracked with exhaustion and fear, particularly when mentioning the children. But the crew of Nexus 7 had heard all before. Every few cycles, some primitive species would overreach their technological capabilities and end up stranded or destroyed. The galaxy was vast and unforgiving, with little patience for the ambitions of those not yet ready for its challenges. "Should we log it in the xenoarchaeology database?" asked Mordek. Future researchers might find their wreckage interesting from an anthropological perspective. Standard protocol, Zek then confirmed, making a few notes in the system. Mark it as primitive species, technological overreach, expected extinction. Include the coordinates for future salvage operations. As the hours passed, the human signal continued to broadcast, growing weaker and more desperate. Commander Chun was joined by others, scientists, engineers, even some of the children making brief appeals for help. The crew of Nexus 7 learned to tune out, just another background noise in the cosmic symphony of civilized space. Dr. Veltar, the station's xenobiologist and a member of the scholarly Ethmeron species, paused at Zekthin Station during her evening rounds. Her elongated skull and large black eyes gave her an almost ethereal appearance as she studied the human transmission data. Interesting species classification, she observed, her voice a whisper that somehow carried clearly through the translator. The computer has marked them as Class 7, but some of these readings suggest unusual characteristics, such as Zekthin looked up from his duty rotation schedules. Their homeworld parameters. Gravity is 1.3 times standard, atmospheric pressure significantly higher than most civilized worlds, radiation levels that would be considered hazardous on most planets, and she paused, manipulating the holographic display. Remarkable biodiversity indices. Their planet hosts an extraordinary number of predatory species. So, they come from a harsh world. Mordek rumbled from across the room. Many species do. It doesn't make them special. Perhaps not, Dr. Veltar mused. But the psychological profiles derived from their transmissions are intriguing. They show remarkable persistence in the face of certain death. Most civilized species would have accepted their fate and begun preparation for dignified termination. These humans continue to fight, to hope, to search for solutions even when none exist. Zek then made an amused clicking sound. Denial is common among primitives who haven't yet learned to accept the universe's indifference. They'll learn if they live long enough. Maybe, Dr. Veltar said quietly, still studying the data. Or maybe they represent something we've forgotten. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from the long-range sensors. Lieutenant Kexhal, a young Valerian officer monitoring the detection arrays, suddenly straightened at his console. Commander Mordek, I'm picking up unusual readings from the outer system boundary. Multiple contacts, bearing 274 Mark 15. Mordek lumbered over to the sensor station, his massive frame requiring the reinforced deck plating to accommodate his weight. Identification, unknown, sir. The signatures don't match anything in our database. Energy patterns are strange, very strange. Zek then joined them, his curiosity finally piqued by something other than routine communications. Show me. The main display shimmered to life, showing the outer reaches of their monitoring zone. At first, nothing appeared unusual, just the normal scatter of asteroids, gas clouds, and background radiation. Then, Kexhal enhanced the sensor resolution, and contact markers began appearing across the screen. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. How many ships? Mordek's voice had lost all traces of earlier amusement. Computer estimates over 3,000 vessels, sir. Range and configuration suggest a major fleet movement, but the design parameters don't match any known civilization. Dr. Veltar leaned forward, her large eyes reflecting the display's glow. Could they be from outside our galaxy? Impossible, Zekthin replied automatically. Intergalactic travel is beyond even the most advanced civilizations. The energy requirements alone. His words trailed off as the sensor data continued to update. The unknown fleet was maintaining a steady course directly toward their system, moving at speeds that suggested highly advanced propulsion technology. More troubling, their energy signatures indicated power outputs that rivaled entire planetary grids. Sir, Kexhal's voice carried a tremor of fear. I'm detecting weapons signatures. Massive ones. These aren't exploration vessels. The operations center fell into tense silence as the implications sank in. Someone, or something, with technology far superior to anything in the known galaxy, was approaching their position with what appeared to be hostile intent. Send a priority alert to all 3 Empire commands, Mordek ordered. Include all sensor data and request immediate military response. Already done, sir, Kexal confirmed. But the nearest battle fleets are at least 6 days away. Dr. Veltar's whispered voice cut through the tension. What if they're not here for us? All eyes turned to her. Explain, Zekthan demanded. The trajectory. They're not heading for the station or any of the Empire worlds. They're heading for... She paused, checking the coordinates. Sector 7, Alpha 9, the same sector where the human distress signal originated. A chill seemed to settle over the operations center as the impossible implications began to surface. Zekthan pulled up the human transmission again, studying the technical data with new urgency. There has to be another explanation, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Primitive species don't have allies, especially not allies with technology like this. Unless, Dr. Veltar said quietly, we've misunderstood something fundamental about these humans. The unknown fleet continued its steady approach, and the human distress signal continued its desperate broadcast. For the first time since the transmission began, the crew of Nexus 7 found themselves listening to Commander Chen's words with something other than dismissive amusement. 3,000 souls aboard. Her voice echoed through the communications array, including 500 children, as the sensor readings updated every few minutes, showing the mysterious fleet's relentless advance. A question began forming in every mind on the station. Who exactly were these humans, and why was someone with godlike technology racing across the galaxy to answer their call for help? The answer would come soon enough, but already the comfortable certainties of galactic civilization were beginning to crack around the edges. The universe, it seemed, still held surprises for those who thought they understood its rules. Commander Chen's voice continued its loop, no longer sounding quite so primitive or desperate. Instead, it began to sound like something else entirely, a warning that the galaxy was about to discover that sometimes the prey had very dangerous friends. The first ship appeared on visual sensors 18 hours after initial contact, and it defied every assumption the galactic powers held about vessel design and physics. Where civilized ships followed elegant, streamlined aesthetics optimized for efficiency and beauty, this vessel looked like it had been forged in the heart of a dying star and tempered by cosmic violence. Dr. Veltar stood transfixed before the main display as the alien ship resolved into crystalline clarity. The vessel stretched nearly 2 kilometers in length, its hull a matte black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Geometric patterns covered its surface, not decorative elements, but functional components whose purpose remained mysterious. Most unsettling were the weapon ports, dozens of them, each large enough to house weaponry that could level continents. Computer analysis suggests the hull composition includes materials not found in our periodic table, reported Kexal, his usual nervous energy replaced by professional focus. Energy output readings are off our measurement scales. Zekthan leaned forward in his chair, studying the tactical display. Classification: unknown. The computer can't match the design to any known civilization, past or present. It's not Valerian, Kryn, Melodian, or any of the 100 lesser species in our database. More ships began appearing as the fleet dropped out of whatever impossible faster-than-light travel they employed. Each vessel was unique in configuration while maintaining the same ominous aesthetic. Some bristled with weapon arrays, others carried massive sensor equipment, and several appeared to be troop transports of staggering size. Mordek's warrior instincts were screaming danger as he watched the tactical display populate with hostile contacts. 3,000 ships minimum, all military configuration. This isn't a rescue mission, it's an invasion fleet. But why here? Lyra sang, her melodious tones carrying notes of confusion and fear. This system has no strategic value. No rare resources, no trade routes, nothing worth conquering. Dr. Veltar's large eyes remained fixed on the display as she whispered her response. Unless they're not here for us. The mysterious fleet arranged itself in a formation that spoke of military precision and overwhelming force. The larger vessels took position in a defensive perimeter while smaller, faster ships began accelerating toward the inner system, toward the coordinates where the human distress signal originated. I'm detecting launch signatures, Kexal announced. Multiple contacts, high velocity, heading directly for the human vessel's last known position. Zekthan's four eyes tracked the tactical plot with growing disbelief. They're actually responding to that primitive distress call. Impossible, mordek Humboldt. No civilization capable of fielding this level of technology would concern itself with saving a few thousand primitives. The resources alone would be worth more than their entire planet. But the evidence was undeniable. The unknown fleet had traveled impossible distances to arrive at these coordinates, and now they were deploying rescue operations with the efficiency of a well-rehearsed military exercise. Sir, Kexal's voice cracked with tension. We're being scanned. Deep penetration scanners, technology far beyond our shielding capabilities. They know everything about this station. The main display chimed with an incoming transmission. The crew of Nexus 7 stared at the communication alert with a mixture of curiosity and dread. First contact with an unknown supercivilization was the kind of event that changed the course of galactic history, assuming anyone survived to record it. Accept the transmission, more deck ordered after a moment's hesitation. The screen filled with an image that would haunt the nightmares of every crew member for the rest of their lives. The being looking back at them was vaguely humanoid, but clearly not human. Its skin was a deep purple-black, marked with intricate silver patterns that seemed to pulse with their own light. Its eyes were large and completely black, reflecting intelligence that felt ancient beyond measure. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that suggested both advanced technology and something primal that predated civilization. I am Fleet Commander Vexera of the Hegemony Expeditionary Force. You will explain why you ignored a distress signal from our protected species. The silence that followed stretched for what felt like eternity. Protected species. The implications crashed over the station crew like a tidal wave of realization. Zekthan found his voice first, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. Protected species? The humans. The humans of Sol 3, designated Earth, have been under hegemony protection for 2,000 of your years. We have been monitoring their development and guarding them from interference. Your failure to respond to their distress signal constitutes a violation of protected species protocols. Dr. Veltar stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her fear. We didn't know. How could we have known? There are no records of any civilization monitoring or protecting them. Commander Vexera's expression didn't change, but something in the way the silver patterns on her skin pulsed suggested amusement. Your ignorance was by design. The hegemony prefers to work unseen, allowing protected species to develop naturally while ensuring they face no existential threats they cannot overcome. But why them? Zekthan demanded, his translator struggling to convey his desperation. They're primitives, chemical rockets, and nuclear fission. They haven't even achieved faster-than-light travel. Have they not? Commander Vexera touched something off-screen, and the display shifted to show the human vessel, the UEF Resilience. But the image that appeared was not of a primitive generation ship limping through space. The vessel had been transformed. Hegemony technology had been seamlessly integrated with the human design, creating a hybrid that maintained the original aesthetic while incorporating capabilities that defied physics as the galactic powers understood it. The ship's hull now gleamed with the same energy patterns visible on the hegemony vessels, and weapon ports had appeared where none existed before. The humans you dismissed as primitives designed and built this vessel using only the resources of their single world. Commander Vexera continued. They planned a journey to another star that would take multiple generations, prepare to sacrifice their own lives so their children might see new worlds. When their systems failed, they did not despair. They continued to fight, to broadcast, to hope, even facing certain death. The display shifted to show the interior of the human ship. The crew moved through corridors with purpose and determination, working frantically to repair systems and extend life support. These were not beings who had given up. Despite being stranded in the void with failing technology, they continued to innovate, to adapt, to survive. This is why they are protected, Commander Vexera said. Not for their technology, which is indeed primitive. Not for their military might, which is negligible. But for what they represent. The refusal to surrender in the face of impossible odds. The willingness to sacrifice everything for the next generation. The ability to hope when hope itself seems futile. Dr. Veltar watched the images with growing understanding. They come from a death world. Indeed, a planet that has produced a species capable of thriving in environments that would kill most civilized beings. They have survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcano eruptions, and countless other catastrophes. They have adapted to every challenge their world has presented, emerging stronger each time. Mordek's military mind grasped the implications first. You're not just protecting them. You're recruiting them. Commander Vexera's silence was confirmation enough. The display showed more images. Humans working alongside hegemony beings, human designs being incorporated into impossible technologies, human settlements on worlds that should be uninhabitable. The humans call them Deathworlders, she finally said. Beings evolved on planets so hostile that they develop capabilities unimaginable to those raised in more benign environments. Your civilizations grew strong through cooperation and mutual support. The humans grew strong through adversity and conflict. But there must be other Deathworld species, Lyraness sang, her tones carrying desperate hope. There are, and we protect them all. But the humans are unique. They possess a combination of traits rarely seen. Technological innovation, emotional resilience, strategic thinking, and perhaps most importantly, the ability to form bonds of loyalty that transcend species barriers. The tactical display updated to show the human vessel now safely docked with a hegemony support ship. The rescue had been completed while they talked. 3,000 human lives saved by technology that made galactic civilization look like children playing with toys. What happens now? Zekthan asked, though he dreaded the answer. Now the humans know they are not alone. They know there are those who have watched over them, who value them for what they are and what they might become. They will be offered a choice: return to their home world to continue their natural development, or join us among the stars. And if they choose to join you, Commander Vexera's alien features arrange themselves into what might have been a smile. Then, the galaxy will discover what it means to face an enemy that never surrenders, never retreats, and never leaves their allies behind. The transmission ended, leaving the crew of Nexus 7 staring at a blank screen. Around them, alarms began sounding as the tactical display showed the hegemony fleet moving to new positions. Not attacking, but clearly establishing dominance over the sector. Sir, Kexal's voice was barely audible over the alarms. The hegemony ships are scanning all major settlements in this sector. They're cataloging everything. Population centers, military installations, resource nodes, everything. Mordek's massive hands clenched into fists. They're mapping us for conquest. No, Dr. Veltar whispered, her scientific mind processing the implications faster than the others. They're assessing us, deciding whether we're worthy of protection or pose a threat to their protected species. The weight of that realization settled over them like a shroud. The galaxy's established order, built on the assumption that they represented the pinnacle of civilization, had just been revealed as nothing more than a collection of children playing at being important. Somewhere in the distance, the human distress signal finally went silent. The UEF resilience was safe, its crew rescued by allies whose existence had been hidden for millennia. But for the crew of Nexus 7, and indeed for all of galactic civilization, a new and terrifying chapter was about to begin. The Deathworlders had found protectors, and those protectors were now very interested in the civilizations that had laughed at their cries for help. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the massive amphitheater aboard Nexus Prime, the capital station that served as the seat of interstellar government. Representatives from all three major powers filled the curved seating arrangements, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, harmonic tones, and electromagnetic pulses that the universal translator struggled to process simultaneously. High Counselor Thexdar of the Valerian Empire called for order, his chittering voice amplified through the chamber's acoustic systems. As the most senior member of the council, his 4 eyes swept across the assembled delegates with obvious strain. In his 3 centuries of service, nothing had prepared him for the crisis they now faced. We gather in extraordinary session to address the unprecedented contact with the entity calling itself the Hegemony, he announced. Admiral Kextar will present the military assessment. The massive Kryn admiral rose from his reinforced seating, his battle-scarred carapace reflecting the chamber's lights as he moved to the central podium. His species had evolved from predators on a high-gravity world, making them a natural choice for military leadership across the galaxy. But even his intimidating presence seemed diminished by the weight of his report. Honored delegates, Admiral Kextar's rumbling voice carried the gravity of his assessment. The Hegemony fleet demonstrates technological capabilities that exceed our understanding of physics. Their vessels appear to manipulate space-time directly, achieve faster-than-light travel without detectable energy signatures, and mount weapons that could sterilize entire world from distances measured in light years. Disturbed harmonics echoed from the Melodian section as Ambassador Lyrathes voiced their concern. How many vessels comprise their total force? Conservative estimates suggest a minimum of 50,000 combat-capable ships based on sensor readings from multiple sectors. However, our intelligence indicates this represents only a small expeditionary force. The Hegemony's true military strength remains unknown. Shocked silence filled the chamber as the implications settled over the assembled delegates. The combined fleets of all 3 empires barely numbered 10,000 vessels, and most of those were designed for patrol duties rather than fleet combat. Dr. Veltar stepped forward from the scientific advisory panel, her ethereal Ethmiron features composed despite the circumstances. Honored Council, I must emphasize that the Hegemony has shown no aggressive intentions toward our civilizations. Their interest appears focused entirely on the humans and what they term protected species. Yet they have demonstrated the capability to destroy us all, growled Admiral Kextar. Military doctrine demands we treat capability as equivalent to intent when facing an unknown force. High Counselor Thexdar raised a primary hand for attention. What do we know about these protected species they referenced? Dr. Veltar activated a holographic display showing stellar cartography data. Our analysis has identified 17 worlds in this region that match the profile of the human homeworld. High gravity, elevated radiation, extreme weather patterns, abundant predatory species. What the humans call Deathworlds. We had classified most of these as unsuitable for intelligent life. You're saying there are 17 more civilizations like the humans under this Hegemony's protection? Ambassador Lyrathes's harmonics carried notes of disbelief. Potentially more. These are only the worlds in our monitored sectors. The Hegemony's influence appears to extend far beyond our borders. A new voice entered the discussion as Ambassador Zarketh of the neutral worlds rose from his section. His species, the Vorthak, had evolved as traders and diplomats, making them skilled at reading between the lines of political communication. Has anyone considered that we might have fundamentally misunderstood the nature of galactic civilization? We assumed we were the dominant intelligent life forms because we developed faster than light travel and established interstellar governments. But what if we simply occupied a nursery while the real powers watch from outside? The chamber erupted in agitated communication across all frequency ranges. The suggestion that their entire civilization was nothing more than children under observation struck at the core of every delegate's understanding of their place in the universe. High Counselor Thexdar called for order, but before the chamber could settle, alarms began sounding throughout the station. The main display shifted to show sensor readings from the outer system perimeter, where space itself seemed to be folding in ways that violated every law of physics the assembled civilizations understood. Council members, the station's defense coordinator announced over the communication system, "We are detecting massive spatial distortions throughout the sector. Unknown vessels are materializing at will, appearing to move through dimensions we cannot access." The display shifted to tactical view, showing hegemony ships appearing in perfect formation around every major population center in the region. Not attacking, but their presence carried an unmistakable message. We can be anywhere we choose, at any time we choose. Admiral Kekstar's combat instincts demanded action, but his strategic mind recognized the futility. They could have destroyed every installation in the sector before our sensors detected the first distortion. This is not an attack. It's a demonstration. A communication request chimed through the chamber systems, originating from the lead hegemony vessel, now positioned within scanning range of the station. High Counselor Thexdar looked around the chamber, seeing his own apprehension reflected in hundreds of alien faces, before authorizing the connection. The holographic display filled with the image of Commander Vexera, but now she was not alone. Standing beside her was a human, the first any of the council delegates had seen in person. The being was shorter than most galactic species, with pale skin marked by what appeared to be deliberate scarring, and eyes that held an intensity that made several council members instinctively step back. "I am Commander Sarah Chun of the UEF Resilience." The human spoke, her words translated into the cacophony of galactic languages. "I come to address the council on behalf of my people." Dr. Veltar leaned forward, studying the human with scientific fascination. Despite her species' reputation for analytical detachment, she found herself impressed by the human's bearing. Commander Chun stood with the confidence of someone accustomed to command, but there was something else, a readiness for violence that civilized species had bred out of themselves millennia ago. "You are the one who sent the distress signal," High Counselor Thexdar observed. "I am. And your response, or lack thereof, has been noted." Commander Chin's voice carried no anger, but her words sent a chill through the chamber. "The hegemony has offered my people a choice: remain on Earth under their protection, or join their confederation and take our place among the stars." "And your decision?" Ambassador Zarketh asked, though his diplomatic experience suggested he already knew the answer. "We choose the stars. But first, we have questions about the civilizations that ignored our calls for help while we faced death in the void." Commander Vexera stepped forward. "The humans wish to understand galactic civilization before deciding how to interact with it. They find it interesting that advanced species would allow 3,000 beings to die rather than expend minimal resources on rescue operations." Admiral Kekstar bristled at the implied criticism. "We had no obligation to interfere with primitive species beyond our borders. Galactic law clearly states your laws," Commander Chun interrupted, "appear designed to protect the comfortable while allowing the vulnerable to suffer. Where I come from, we call that cowardice." The chamber erupted in outraged communication across the spectrum. No primitive species had ever dared address the Galactic Council with such directness, much less accuse them of moral failure. But Commander Vexera raised a hand, and the chamber fell silent with a suddenness that demonstrated exactly who held real power in this situation. "The humans have spent the past 36 hours studying your civilizations," she announced. "They have reviewed your histories, your laws, your military capabilities, and your cultural development. They have conclusions to share. Commander Chun activated her own holographic display, showing detailed analyses of galactic civilization that should have been impossible for her people to compile in such a short time. The data was more comprehensive and accurate than intelligence reports that took the Council's best analysts years to produce. Your civilizations have achieved remarkable technological advancement, she began, but you have done so by eliminating conflict, competition, and adversity. You have created stable, peaceful societies where every citizen's needs are met and no one faces existential challenges. Surely that is preferable to the chaos and violence of primitive worlds, Ambassador Lyrathes sang. Is it? Commander Chen manipulated her display to show comparative data. Your birth rates have been declining for centuries. Your innovation has stagnated. Your military forces are ceremonial at best. You have bred yourselves into evolutionary dead ends. Dr. Veltar found herself nodding in agreement despite her best efforts to remain neutral. The data supports her assessment. Our civilizations show all the markers of species in terminal decline. Meanwhile, Commander Chun continued, Deathworld species like humanity continue to evolve, adapt, and overcome challenges. We thrive in conditions that would kill your people. We innovate out of necessity. We fight because we must. And we never, ever abandon our own. The display shifted to show footage from the UEF resilience during its crisis. Even facing certain death, the human crew had continued working frantically to find solutions, to extend life support, to protect their children. There had been no panic, no despair, no acceptance of fate. The hegemony recognizes what you have forgotten, Commander Vexera added. Evolution does not end with civilization. It continues through challenge and adversity. By eliminating those forces from your societies, you have doomed yourselves to stagnation and eventual extinction. What are you proposing? High Counselor Thexdar asked, though he suspected he wouldn't like the answer. Commander Chin's expression hardened into something that reminded every delegate why their ancestors had once been prey animals. Nothing. We propose nothing. You made your choice when you laughed at our distress signal. When you dismissed us as primitives not worth saving. When you chose comfort over compassion. She manipulated the display again, showing real-time images of hegemony vessels throughout the sector. But now the council members could see that some of those ships were not of hegemony design. They were human vessels, upgraded with impossible technology, crewed by beings who had faced death and chosen to fight instead of surrender. We will remember who answered our call for help, Commander Chin concluded, and we will remember who did not. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Around the sector, hegemony ships began disappearing back into whatever impossible dimensions they used for travel. But their message was clear. The galaxy now contained powers that made the established civilizations look like children playing with toys. And those powers had just recruited allies who would never forgive or forget. 6 months after first contact with the hegemony, the galactic political landscape had transformed beyond recognition. The emergency sessions at Nexus Prime had become permanent, with delegates rotating through crisis management teams that worked around the clock to understand their new reality. Dr. Veltar stood in her private laboratory aboard the research station Contemplation's Edge, studying the latest intelligence reports with growing unease. As the galaxy's leading xenobiologist, she had been tasked with analyzing the implications of Deathworld species joining an advanced interstellar confederation. The results kept her awake through multiple sleep cycles. Computer, display the updated sector map, she commanded, watching as the holographic projection filled the space above her desk. What she saw confirmed her worst fears. Red markers indicated confirmed hegemony presence. Not the massive fleet demonstrations of first contact, but subtle signs of permanent infrastructure. Monitoring stations disguised as asteroids. Communication relays that appeared as background radiation unless you knew exactly what to look for. Most disturbing of all, recruitment centers on 17 different death worlds throughout the region. The humans had not been unique. They were simply the first to reach for the stars and trigger hegemony intervention. A soft chime announced an incoming transmission, the identifier showing it came from Commander Chun aboard the human vessel UEF Resilience. Over the past months, the human commander had established direct communication channels with several galactic scientists and diplomats, much to the dismay of official government channels. Dr. Veltar accepted the connection, watching as Commander Chin's image appeared in her lap. The human looked different now, still recognizably the same person who had addressed the Galactic Council, but enhanced by technology that made her previous appearance seem primitive by comparison. Her movements carried the fluid precision of someone augmented by hegemony biotechnology, and her eyes reflected an intelligence expanded beyond baseline human parameters. Dr. Veltar, Commander Chin's greeting carried warmth that seemed genuine despite the vast gulf between their species. I hope you have time to discuss some concerns that have come to our attention. Always, Commander. Your insights have proven invaluable for understanding the changing political situation. Thank you. I'm contacting you because my people have been monitoring galactic communications, and we're detecting some troubling patterns. It appears several military factions within your civilizations are planning coordinated operations they're calling defensive actions against hegemony interests. Dr. Veltar felt her large eyes widen in alarm. Military action against the hegemony would be suicidal. Surely your intelligence is mistaken. I wish it were. Admiral Kextar of the Kryn has been building a coalition based on the argument that the hegemony represents an existential threat to galactic civilization. He's convinced several planetary governments that preemptive action is necessary before more Deathworld species join their confederation. The implications crashed over Dr. Veltar like a tidal wave of horrified realization. They're planning to attack before you become too powerful to resist, which demonstrates exactly why they're not ready for the responsibilities of true interstellar civilization. Commander Chun replied with a sadness that seemed ancient despite her relatively young appearance. They've learned nothing from our initial contact. Dr. Veltar manipulated her displays to show military deployment data from across the sector. The patterns were subtle, but unmistakable once you knew what to look for. Battle fleets moving to forward positions under the pretense of training exercises. Resource stockpiles being built up in systems near known hegemony monitoring stations. Weapons research projects that have been accelerated beyond all normal timelines. How long do we have? She asked, dreading the answer. According to our analysis, Admiral Kextar's coalition will be ready to move within 30 standard days. They're planning simultaneous strikes on what they believe are key hegemony installations, hoping to cripple our ability to respond. Can you stop them? Commander Chin's expression grew contemplative. The question isn't whether we can stop them, Dr. Veltar. The question is whether we should. I don't understand. The hegemony has protected Deathworld species for millions of years. We've watched civilizations rise and fall, seen empires span galaxies and collapse into dust. We've learned that some lessons can only be taught through direct experience. Dr. Veltar felt a chill run through her elongated frame. You're going to let them attack. We're going to let them choose their own path. If galactic civilization believes it can challenge the hegemony through military force, they're welcome to try. The consequences will be educational. The transmission ended, leaving Dr. Veltar alone with the horrible certainty of what was coming. She immediately opened communication channels to every contact she had in the scientific community, desperate to warn anyone who would listen. But she was too late. Even as she composed her first messages, alerts began flashing across her displays, showing massive fleet movements throughout the sector. Admiral Kextar's coalition was moving ahead of schedule, apparently believing they had achieved tactical surprise. The attack began with simultaneous strikes on 12 different locations the coalition had identified as hegemony facilities. Thousands of ships converged on asteroids, space stations, and monitoring posts with weapons blazing, determined to cripple the mysterious enemy before it could respond. For 17 minutes, it appeared the attack might succeed. Coalition forces reported successful destruction of all targeted installations with minimal resistance. Communication networks across the galaxy buzzed with reports of human vessels fleeing rather than fighting, apparently caught off guard by the coordinated assault. Then, the hegemony responded. Dr. Veltar watched in horror as her sensors detected spatial distortions throughout the attack zones. Hegemony ships didn't just appear. They materialized from dimensions that existed parallel to normal space-time, emerging directly behind coalition battle groups that had no warning of their approach. The destruction was methodical, precise, and utterly overwhelming. Each coalition vessel found itself targeted by weapons that bypassed shields and armor as if they didn't exist. Crews had just enough time to realize their situation before their ships were disabled with surgical precision, leaving them alive, but completely helpless. Within 1 hour, Admiral Kekstar's entire coalition fleet had been neutralized without a single hegemony casualty. But the demonstration wasn't over. Commander Chen's voice echoed across every communication channel in the sector, from the largest space stations to the smallest research outposts. When she spoke, her words carried the weight of absolute authority backed by demonstrated power. "Leaders of galactic civilization," she began, "your military forces have just attempted to destroy installations belonging to the hegemony and its member species. This action was carried out against beings who had offered you no harm and represented no threat to your sovereignty." The display screens throughout the sector showed images of the disabled coalition vessels, their crews alive, but completely at the mercy of their captors. Then, the perspective shifted to show the true scope of hegemony presence in the region. Hundreds of thousands of ships materialized from dimensional space, revealing a military presence that dwarfed the combined fleets of all galactic civilizations. But these were not the same vessels that had appeared during first contact. These ships carried design elements that were unmistakably human, as well as features from 16 other species that the galaxy had dismissed as primitive or non-existent. "You attacked us believing we were weak," Commander Chen continued. "You assumed that our technology, however advanced, could be overcome through numerical superiority and tactical surprise. You were wrong. But more importantly, you revealed the fundamental flaw in your civilizations." Dr. Veltar watched as the display showed detailed psychological profiles of the coalition leadership. Admiral Kekstar and his allies had acted not out of genuine fear for their people's safety, but from wounded pride and the desperate need to maintain their position as the dominant powers in their region of space. When faced with superior beings, you chose aggression over diplomacy. When offered cooperation, you chose conflict. When given the opportunity to learn and grow, you chose to remain in comfortable ignorance. The implications of those words sent waves of fear through every civilized world. This was not just a military defeat. It was a moral judgment by beings whose capabilities made resistance futile. The hegemony has spent millions of years nurturing young civilizations, protecting them from external threats while allowing them to develop naturally. We had hoped your species might eventually prove worthy of joining our confederation. Today's events have demonstrated otherwise. Dr. Veltar found herself trembling as she realized what was coming. This wasn't conquest. It was something far worse. Effective immediately, your civilizations are under protective quarantine. You will not expand beyond your current territorial boundaries. You will not interfere with Deathworld species under our protection. You will not develop weapons capable of threatening hegemony interests. The quarantine boundaries appeared on navigation charts throughout the sector, clearly marking the limits of galactic civilizations' allowed expansion. They were generous enough to allow continued growth and development, but they effectively ended any dreams of becoming a true interstellar power. This quarantine will remain in effect until your civilizations demonstrate they have evolved beyond the aggressive territorialism and xenophobic tendencies that led to today's unprovoked attack. That process may take centuries or millennia. The transmission ended, leaving galactic civilization facing a reality that none of its leaders had imagined possible. They had been relegated to the status of children under supervision, their expansion into the greater universe suspended until they proved they could be trusted with greater responsibilities. Dr. Veltar slumped in her chair, watching as hegemony vessels took up positions throughout the sector, not occupying worlds or enslaving populations, but maintaining a watchful presence that would prevent any further aggressive actions. In trying to prevent their own irrelevance, the galactic powers had ensured it. The Deathworlders and their hegemony allies control the galaxy now, and they had shown both the power and the wisdom to use that control responsibly. The greatest irony, Dr. Veltar realized, was that if galactic civilization had simply answered that first distress call, if they had shown compassion for 3,000 dying humans instead of laughing at their primitive desperation, none of this would have been necessary. But they had chosen to remain comfortable in their assumptions of superiority, and now they would spend generations learning humility under the guidance of beings they had dismissed as primitives. The Deathworlders had inherited the stars, and the galaxy would be better for it.